Do you really need to get your VO2 max tested? What does the science really tell us about VO2 max and longevity? Hi guys, Marc Bubbs here, performance and clinical nutritionist. I've been working in elite sport for over 20 years, consulting in all the professional leagues, as well as coaching executives in numerous Fortune 100 companies. And I'm here to help translate the science to you. In today's video, you're going to hear from world-class performance coach Steve Magness about some of the nuances of testing VO2 max. Listen as Steve unpacks things in this first clip.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's all sorts of research that shows that essentially one of the best predictors of longevity is VO2 max, which is true. But what often they don't tell you in these when people talk about these studies online is that often it's not actually VO2 max that they're testing. What happens is they're estimating VO2 max based on some sort of performance test. Sometimes how fast did the treadmill get? How fast were you able to get on the treadmill before you got tired and called it quits?
Yep.
Sometimes it's a 10-minute, bike test where, hey, 10 minutes, go as long as you can go and we'll measure the distance. And that's what it is. It is those sorts of things that then they estimate VO2 max and then tie predictions of longevity towards.
So there are a lot of nuances when it comes to testing VO2 max. The protocol used, the regression equations that are being used to be able to translate the output from the run you did or the bike output you did to turn that into a VO2 max score. So if you're a professional athlete, a boxer or combat sport athlete, or of course an endurance athlete, then knowing your VO2 max is a tremendous tool to be able to identify your training zones, which will inform the training plan that your coach puts out for you month after month. What about the rest of us? Do you still need that if you haven't trained in a while and you're unfit or you're just getting back into things? I'll cover this a little further down in the video. Better question might be, is there a simpler way to assess your fitness? In this next clip, Steve shares 3 simple strategies that you can use to benchmark your fitness.
And what that means to me is like, yeah, if you want to get in the lab and get the number, it's cool to do that. But to me, it tells me something far simpler, which is like any sort of aerobic performance test will give you a good idea of where you fall and like predict longevity to a degree. So that could be a 2K row on a rowing machine. It could be going down the track and running a mile. It could be, using or going on a bike and doing a 5-minute power test. Whatever it is, like something in those lasting several minutes, anywhere from 4 to probably 15 minutes or so, is going to give you a really good predictor of like, where's my health that ties towards longevity. And I think
there you have it. 3 simple tests. Go out and run a mile, do a 2,000-meter row, or a 5-minute bike test. Simple, actionable, and straightforward. And the results you get will dovetail with your goals of longevity down the road. But best of all, they also serve as an easy and repeatable benchmark. It's not easy and it's very expensive to continually go into a lab to get tested. And for most people, it's just not necessary. Life is busy. You're busy. Work life, home life, training life. It's tough enough to find enough time to get your training in, let alone block off half a day to go and get tested. Steve unpacks in this next clip how you can use that data to benchmark your progress moving forward.
And I think the other part of it is it also gives you a good benchmark, because it's really hard to go into a lab and say, hey, I'm going to test my VO2 max and then go do this again and again. But it's really easy to go down to the track and you don't even have to go to all out. You can essentially, run pretty dang hard and say, hey, was that a little easier than when I did that a month ago? Was my heart rate a little bit less than when I did that a month ago? And it gives you this easy measure to track, am I maintaining or getting better at this kind of general aerobic health, which we know matters a whole heck of a lot for health and longevity.
Great insights, and particularly even the how long it takes you to recover afterwards. It's another nice one, isn't it? Of like, oh wow, that was much easier than a month ago. I'm not breathing hard for 5 minutes. Are you getting faster? Are you running the same distance with a lower heart rate? Are you putting more watts out on the bike? Are you rowing a further distance? How long does it take your heart rate to come back down after those intense bouts? Is that time getting shorter? These are all very, very powerful tools for tracking your fitness over time. All right, let's pivot now. A common question I get asked by clients and coaches and busy executives is how should I train if I only have 2 or 3 days? If I know that at minimum I'll always get the 2 days in or 3 days in, not necessarily the 4, 5, or 6 days, but at least those 3 days, how should I structure my training? Steve weighs in this next clip.
Yeah, it's a tricky question when you've only got a couple days a week to train. But here's how I like to see it: is number one, you have to get fit enough to do the hard stuff.
Mhm.
If you're out of breath when you're going on a jog, then like doing hard stuff probably isn't going to help very much because your base is so small that like essentially you have zero exercise zones because they all blend together. And we see this in the lab that if you looked at lactate, like it would go from like 0 to 10 just by increasing the pace a little bit or intensity a
Yeah.
little bit because you have no foundation. So first off, I would say it's just step one is move, right? And once you're doing enough stuff that is moving, whether that's bike or run or elliptical or whatever it is, however you want to get it in, then I think that allows you to start thinking about training. And even if you have only a couple days a week, what I would say is once you're fit enough to train, meaning you can do something where it's like you're not out of breath every single time you do it or like dreading it, then what I like to think of for the normal person, again, you periodize it, but for the normal person, if we have 3 days, I like to say like two relatively easy. Maybe
Mhm.
one of those days has what I'd call like easy but feel good fast,
Yep.
meaning like you do a couple pickups, but it's not fatiguing. You're
Yeah.
just getting used to like putting some
Feeling
some
some.
power into the pedals,
Yep.
getting some stride length in there, right? And then one day a week you do something hard or moderately hard. And here, there's all sorts of protocols and stuff. I mainly think they're bullshit because if we look at the general health, what you want to do is just vary it up. Meaning sometimes go short and fast. Go do some hard 30-second strides or 30-second push on the bike or whatever have you and repeat those until you're pretty tired.
Yep.
Other times we want to go longer and a little bit slower and go, maybe, a couple 4-minute repeats or 3-minute repeats. And you're going a little bit slower, but it's whatever. Vary it up. And the reason I say vary it up is because if you look at the spectrum of, adaptations from like all the way sprinting to jogging and everything in between, like every different stimulus gives us a slightly different adaptation. If you were training to run your fastest mile or marathon, we'd want to dial in on like, oh, we need these adaptations here and these then. If you're
Yep.
caring about fitness, all we want to make sure is say, hey, we want a little bit of this, and then we want a little bit of, this over here, meaning short and fast, long and slow, in between. And that's going to cover your bases a lot better than thinking like, okay, this interval session is the be all end all. It's going to take care of everything because it won't.
Yeah.
There's no interval session on earth that is going to give you everything that you need. So just
To sum up, if you're looking for better longevity and performance, number one, get moving. You don't need a fancy VO2 max test to be able to inform how you should train. For most of us who are getting our fitness back or have a basic level of fitness, most of your training zones are all smushed into one. So the test doesn't really inform what you're going to do. Rather than a VO2 max test, you can use 3 simple strategies to get the job done: a 1 mile run, 2,000 meter row, or 5 minute bike test. Follow Steve's roadmap for 2 easy sessions and one more intense one during the week. That can be done in a variety of different ways, and to use that to inform the pace in your future training. If you enjoyed this episode, hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss any more new content.